I have a law degree, but I'm not a doctor. Good afternoon. I'm Bill Doc Walls. I was born and raised in Chicago. I graduated Horace Mann Elementary, Chicago Vocational High School, Tuskegee University, and IIT Chicago Kent College of Law. Back in 1982, when Harold Washington announced his candidacy for mayor, every fiber of my being stood up, and I knew I had to get involved. Chicago was going through some tumultuous times. Lou Palmer had said, "We shall see in '83. There were promises made, but we weren't moving forward towards them. But finally, when Harold announced his candidacy, we knew there was hope. Hope for the people of the city of Chicago who were being put upon by the evil cabal, which is symbolized by Ed Swabell, Ed Vidoliak, and Jane Byrne. They were taking advantage of the people, particularly through the Chicago Housing Authority. And people were suffering in Chicago. So I got involved. I helped organize the Lawyers Committee for Harold Washington, served as president of law students for Harold Washington, served as his assistant scheduler, and then became his direct assistant. Back in 1984, when the Sun-Times evaluated Jane Byrne administration key cabinet members versus the Harold Washington key cabinet members, they said Byrne had no top aide as talented as Bill Walls. And that was my cornerstone, that was my mark. I've been actively involved in Chicago politics, I've been actively involved in Chicago politics because I know it's a long, protracted struggle. It is not one and done. We have to make certain that we restore Chicago city government to the people who need it most. And I'm the candidate with the vision who's capable of doing that, making Chicago one city. We have two Chicagos. We have a world-class Chicago and we have an underclass Chicago. That world-class Chicago is beautiful, safe, tourist-friendly, robust, full of resources, and unlimited opportunity for the privileged few. It's a playground for Rahm Emanuel, and the other 1% who have money, riches, connections, and clout. And then there's that underclass Chicago, Chicago that the mayor and the media would rather ignore and not talk about. Decaying neighborhoods, unsafe streets, people driving and dodging potholes, and children walking to school dodging bullets. That's the reality. Inferior city services, trigger-happy police, no jobs, no schools, no parks, no...
I'm recording this.
Slumlords, food deserts, red light cameras, blue light cameras, speed zone cameras, people being policed to the nth degree. That's not the Chicago that I envision. I envision a Chicago where we unify and involve everybody, every race, creed, color, every ethnicity. People in the city of Chicago should have equal opportunity. And that's what I pledged. I was a member of UAW, a union member. So I understand the importance of unions and the way that they play into the lives of working class people. I also understand that Chicago hasn't had an industry to call its own since the demise of the stockyards. We got too fancy. We said, not in our backyard. We can't stand the smell. So they closed down the stockyards and they built the steel mills in Indiana. And everybody went to work in the steel mills. And then they closed those steel mills because China took that business. And now we have no industry to call our own. New York has Broadway. They have Wall Street. California has film and television. Detroit, a city that's bankrupt, has the automotive industry. We have none. But we have small businesses all across the city of Chicago, where working men and women have pooled their resources and decided that they want to create a legacy for their children and their children's children, but they don't get the support they need. So one of my major initiatives, one of my major initiatives is a program which would be dependent upon our capital improvement program. Now there's a capital improvement program in the city of Chicago, $7.9 billion. Thank you. $7.9 billion. Capital improvement has 4 areas of concentration: economic development, transportation, education, and infrastructure improvement. Typically, the mayors in the city of Chicago use all of that money for infrastructure improvement and ignore the other components. Well, what I'd like to do is take $1 billion of that $7.9 billion, leaving $6.9 billion for road building, and invest in the small businesses in Chicago. We have no industry, but they are our greatest hope for evaluating and finding an industry that we can call our own in this technologically savvy age. There's no way in the world we can go into the 22nd century the way we came out of the 20th. We will identify 1,000 small to medium-sized businesses, industry and geographic diverse, all across the city of Chicago. Those small businesses that have stood by us through wind, rain, storm, and proven that they love Chicago and that all they want is an opportunity to employ their neighbors and the people who live nearby. We'll give them a grant of $1 million each. And I didn't say a loan, I said a grant. These are qualified businesses. We won't just go hand them $1 million check so they can go buy a Cadillac. We will give it to them in measured steps as they prove that they're capable of creating jobs. With that $1 million, we expect that each one of them will be able to create 50 jobs. 50 jobs in the city of Chicago, created by 1,000 companies. That's 50,000 jobs. And we'll talk more about that as we proceed.